So hello, welcome everybody. Let me see, as people are coming in, as you start to come in, it would be great. We always love to start these webinars. Actually, if you don't mind dropping into the chat while you're coming in, just let us know if you're pregnant or how old your baby is, or if you're a birth worker. Let us know how many weeks pregnant you are, where you live. We'd love to see that into the chat, which is always just kind of nice to feel like we are sitting with other people and we get a little sense of people. And that way I also know if you can hear me. So I'm going to let you guys drop into the chat. Somebody has to go first though and tell us where you are, and if you're pregnant or have a baby, because we're so excited today to have LaShanda Dandrich, who is an IBCLC International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. I'm going to tell you about her in a little moment, but in case we have people here who are looking for lactation information as well. Okay, so we have a new doula here in Woodside. Great, welcome. And somebody in Queens who is 11 months postpartum. Fantastic. So yes, feel free to let us know. We're excited to have people here. This week is the 8th annual Black Breastfeeding Week. This campaign was started by Kimberly Seals Allers, Kiddada Green, and Anayah Sangodele-Ayok to highlight the long-term gaping racial disparity in breastfeeding rates. And I'm quoting from their website. This year's theme is Revive, Restore, and Reclaim. And we'll be talking with LaShanda Dandrich, IBCLC, International Board Certified Lactation Consultant of Uptown Village Cooperative. I hope I said that right. You're going to correct me. Not.
Yeah.
About what care does and should look like for Black birthing parents, and how to reduce lactation disparities rooted in bias, lactation myths and facts, and so much more. So this is really an opportunity for us to hear from you, LaShanda, to ask questions. I'm going to ask you some questions, and then for our community out there listening, please feel free to drop into the chat, or there is a Q&A box, which is even better, so that in case your question, we'll get to it over time. It'll live there in the Q&A. Sometimes we miss them in the chat when there's lots of chatting going on, but either way. We have somebody who's 6 weeks postpartum with a beautiful boy from Brooklyn, and a postpartum doula and breastfeeding educator in training with her son at the end of May. So that's very, very exciting. So thanks. All right. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself and Boober, and then introduce LaShanda, and then we'll get going. So my name is Jada Shapiro. I'm the founder of Boober. Boober is a platform where expectant parents and new families can find all of their pregnancy to postpartum care providers, such as birth doulas, postpartum doulas, lactation consultants, and mental health therapists who focus in pregnancy to postpartum. I also founded a company called Birthday Presence, where we've been teaching childbirth education classes, lactation, newborn care, infant CPR and safety, doula training, lactation counselor trainings since 2002. So that is a little bit about me, and I'm really excited to have LaShanda Dandrich here today, who I have a little bit, I'm going to read shortly after her own birth into motherhood. LaShanda's passion for breastfeeding and supporting more mothers in the postpartum period blossomed. She has continued to work as a postpartum doula, getting her credential as an IBCLC, working as a breastfeeding educator in various hospital settings, and establishing lactation groups in New York. She lives in Harlem with her daughter. And I'm going to go ahead and let you finish that intro. Can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself, your work, cooperative, what you're up to?
So, like you said, I'm an IBCLC. If anyone out there who doesn't know what those letters stand for, I know you look in the birthing world and there's all these letters. So I'll try and do a little the birth worker alphabet for you. So an IBCLC is, like Jada said, an International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. When people are asking like, what's the difference? So there are your peer groups out there, or your peer programs such as WIC. There's Latched, there's Chocolate Milk Cafe, we'll talk about that. And then there's a CLC, and those individuals have usually taken a week class or 45 hours of instruction where they take an exam, and they help with more basic latch and knowing how your baby's getting food, and be able to help you with positioning. Your IBCLC is more so, we've had more clinical hours. So there is an exam that is a little bit more intensive. a little bit more costly. And you have to, there are different pathways to get to the exam. And so on all the pathways, you have to spend more hours mentoring and watching the mother-baby dyad, we call it. And so they're more, I would say we're more clinical. Not that we are medicalized, we're not licensed, it's a certification, but it's more clinical. So think out there, if you had a breast reduction or surgeries to your breast, or have hormonal issues where you have low milk supply, if your baby's born with a cleft, or there's the baby's in the NICU, you want to reach out to your IBCLC. So I say it's like a RN versus an NP, if that helps people kind of, you know. So yeah, so I became an IBCLC 6 years ago officially. Like I know time has flown by. Jada mentioned my daughter, so I always say I birthed her. She birthed a lactation consultant. So that's where my passion just bloomed, and I was like, I had a really great, successful breastfeeding relationship, and I thought my daughter and I had a successful breastfeeding relationship. Started asking questions because nobody talks about it before. Our society has moved way far away from it, especially in the Black community. We'll talk about that too. So when I started asking questions and hearing stories and just learning the disparities and everything, I was like, well, I want to help people at least have their own story. And that was even through my pregnancy. You know, when you get pregnant, everyone's always talking to you and giving you advice unsolicited and telling you stuff, and it's usually negative. And it's like, I don't know why we get into this culture where we want to share and like the fear and like the bad stuff sometimes. But I was like, no, I want to have my own story. Like, you can keep that. And I'd listen and smile and nod and just walk away and have my own story. And it was the same for breastfeeding. And not to like push on anybody that you have to do it or you have to do it for this amount of time. But I was in the medical field before. And so being in the medical field, I know that you have to have informed consent, and you have to have all the sides of the story to make your own decision, because you are the expert in your own body. So I just wanted to have people have this information and make the decision for yourself. But I feel if you're only getting one side of the story, that's not consent. That's not a real informed decision. So it grew out of that in a nutshell.
And, you know, I understand that you worked as an IBCLC lactation consultant in the hospital and, of course, privately now. And I guess that's one of the things I'd love to hear from you about in terms of what's happening kind of in hospitals, or what, you know, were you able to see patients enough? Like, where do you think the challenges lie in the hospital, and why do you think so many people seek out private lactation support, like what you do?
So in the hospital, I would say prior to when I became an IBCLC, probably for many, many years, what would happen is, you know, hospitals are businesses. You know, as much as you go to your hospital and you have your individual nurses, doctors, administration who is in there for care and really love what they do, the overall umbrella is that it's a business. And so getting my IBCLC, I'm not an RN. A lot of people think that you have to be an RN, and that's because that's the way that the system kind of plays it and presents it, because hospitals were doing double duty. They would have the RNs go get their IBCLC, and so, oh yeah, we have lactation consultants and they can help with breastfeeding. But we all know, we've all been in a hospital, no matter if it's a postpartum floor or not, you know how busy those hospitals are. And the nurse isn't going to be able to spend 30, 40 an hour with one individual patient for anything, much less to help with breastfeeding, right? So there was just things that would fall off, right? They wouldn't have the time. And so then you had hospitals that would hire. Then we became baby friendly, became a big thing. And the baby friendly means, it's so funny when people who are not in the business and they're like, yeah, so the hospital says they're baby friendly. I would hope so. You know?
They're like, wait, is there?
But yeah, so baby friendly basically means that they were going, it was created to support breastfeeding. So the rooming in, taking away the nurseries, and having lactation consultants, dedicated lactation consultants on staff. So not doing the double duty. But even then, you had hospitals that would only hire RN IBCLCs in case they needed to pull them. So there are not that many, well, there are tons of non-RN IBCLCs, but we couldn't get in the hospitals because it's a liability. Like I said, it's not a licensure, it's a certification. So again, hospital's about business, and it's a liability to have somebody in there, you know, all the paperwork stuff. So they would go baby friendly, and then they did hire people who were not RN IBCLCs, but then there wouldn't be many of us. So it is, you know, lip service where it's like, hey, we have lactation consultants on our, you know, here's the pamphlet with our lactation consultants. Here we are on the website. But you don't know when you get to that hospital and you deliver your baby with the 40 other people that delivered that day, and there's one of me. I'm not going to be able to spend an hour or half an hour, you know? So it gets very exhausting, right? And so for me, I felt like I like to, in my life, one of my mottos is quality over quantity, right? I like to invest my time to be able to help you. I just don't want to say check, I saw this person, right? So, and it becomes very taxing on you, unfortunately. I have to think about my home life and my daughter, like, you know, so I ended up leaving the hospital system because it is a system, and you get exhausted fighting every day of, you know, pushing and proving your importance, right? So I was actually just listening to Kimberly Seals Allers on a live. She created the Earth app. Have you heard of that?
I have. I'm so excited about it, but I'm gonna take it here so people can see it.
Yeah. So she created the Earth app, and so it's going to hold, you know, providers out there and hospitals out there accountable. And so I'm always telling my clients when I can, like not in the initial session, but after, like, you know, I become friends and text, you know, with some of my clients. I'm always like, you know, write that letter to your hospital. You are the consumer, right? Again, it's a business. You are the consumer. Talk to them about your experience. And if you were only able to see that IBCLC for 2 seconds, 10 seconds, talk to them about that. Hospitals are moving towards where they are working really being judged on their patient surveys. So when you get those surveys in the mail, fill them out truthfully, right? Write those letters to ask for the names on the floor of the head nurse, the nurse managers of postpartum, nurse managers of labor and delivery, the head of OB. Really, they really read those and take them into account. So yeah, with private practice, I'm able to take my time to make an appointment, to follow up, right? Part of baby friendly too is that they're supposed to, so if you deliver in a baby friendly hospital, they're supposed to have lactation on. So you see lactation, ideally a dedicated staff of lactation consultants, and there should be some follow-up. So they should be having support groups for you to follow up with, or giving you resources. And luckily the 2 hospitals that I worked for, we actually did calls. So after people went home, we would call them, because it's about the support and the checking in, and not just having people lost in the wind, right?
Definitely. Yeah. Well, no, it's interesting to hear that you have really both of those experiences.
Yeah.
So can we just talk a little bit about really, you know, why does Black Breastfeeding Week matter so much? Like why, you know, I know why, but I would love for you to tell our audience why it matters that we really celebrate Black Breastfeeding Week and talk about it and talk about all the issues related to it.
So, like you mentioned, Kimberly Seals Allers, I always mix up her name, but she was one of the co-founders. And if you want to put in the chat for Black Breastfeeding Week, I would love for people to go, because she's a journalist by trade, and she eloquently has, you know, spelled it out on her on the website. So there is a Black Breastfeeding Week website where you can see. But the basics is that there's disparities, point blank. There are still, the numbers have not changed over, I think it's like a 40-year span, and the basics of it, as if you are an American, or if you're not even an American, if you've been sitting at home watching TV, it's the systemic racism that goes throughout all aspects of life. And again, it shows up in the medical field, right? So it's the reasons why the disparities are still there is because Black women are just not listened to. Then our bodies are not respected. The support isn't there. You know, I can tick off boxes and boxes and boxes, but it's not a physiological thing that Black women don't make milk, or, you know, there's not something wrong with our bodies. There's not something wrong with our babies. It's that we're not getting the support to do it, because people will walk in a room, and just because of the color of your skin, just because your name on a chart, the effort's not going to be put in to actually assist or support, or, you know, again, fill in the blank. So, I mean, I love Black Breastfeeding Week because for me, it's a chance to celebrate, right? All of the women, again, we do breastfeed, and all of us out there. So for me, I've been jokingly calling it my Mardi Gras, right? Literally, show me your teeth, show me your boobs. It's our Mardi Gras. But I use it to celebrate and to say that we are here. We do breastfeed. We full term breastfeed. We tandem feed. We feed. So the gamut, everything, all the things, we do it. So for me, it's like shifting that narrative for my community that is still hearing the narrative from the other community that Black people don't breastfeed. No, come here, come to us. Yes, we do. We're going to show you. We're going to show you how to reclaim it. We're going to show you how to revive it and restore it, because it is here. What they've been telling you, as with everything and a lot of other things, is a lie. We do it. We're here. It's why I'm here. This is all I saw. When someone was pregnant in my family, or a friend, like, I saw a baby on the boob. It was, you know, A plus B equals boob, right? So it was just a no-brainer for me when I got pregnant. Like I said, I didn't, until you start talking to people, then it was like, oh, why, you know, and really opened my eyes to all the disparities. But yeah, I always saw it. So representation is a big thing. Representation matters. I was watching another live and somebody said the mirror effect, and I like that. Like, and as Black people, we know when I walk into a room as a lactation consultant, when I was in the hospital, it's just different. You can receive the message differently. So yeah, we're here. Representation matters. We've been doing this, right? If you really want to go down the history and the road, not only were we always breastfeeding our children, if you want to go back to Africa, right? But as we came here, we didn't breastfeed our children because we were made to breastfeed other people's children, but it was still breastfeeding. But that wasn't our fault, right? It was a disruption to our legacy. So, but yeah, for me, it's more to change that narrative to my community, to show those that we're here. And, you know, for the community out there that is not Black or of color, Black or brown, for hopefully you're taking this time to go to the website to educate yourself as well. But that's not my main focus. I hope you everyone know that my main focus is to support us and celebrate us for Black Breastfeeding Week.
Absolutely. Thank you. And somebody actually asked, which is something I was going to lead into as you started to talk about the hospitals and the disparities, right? You know, if somebody walks in, or if there's a lactation consultant or a doctor or a staff member who believes that Black women don't breastfeed, then they're more likely, how is that systemic racism and that assumption in the system, potentially, as somebody writes here, somebody says, are Black mothers offered formula 9 times more than other mothers? Do you know the source of that statistic? And I'm not sure if that's the stat or not, right? But we have to know that completely affects how somebody's lactation trajectory, right? If you walk in and you just...
I've heard from, I have a very big doula population, because I came up as a doula, and I actually teach doulas breastfeeding, and, you know, especially the birth doulas in there, both because they're in there in the delivery room, right? So with families. And so I've heard stories where doulas have been like, yeah, before anything, like, baby has just entered the world and there's a nurse in the back screwing on a bottle nipple. Why? Did you touch that woman's breast to see if she has milk? Right? You know, I've been on the floor and gone into rooms where the baby's gotten, you know, day-old baby, again, babies' tummies are tiny. Why? So the thing that angers me so much is that as a medical professional, why are you doing this? Because we know that human milk is better, right? You know you have a population that is more susceptible to obesity and asthma and all these things. So wouldn't you want to push that human milk first? So when these things are happening, or I go into a room and the baby has been given an ounce of formula or not instructed, right? So the bottle's just placed there and the family's not educated on how big that baby's tummy is, right? And then the baby is stuffed, and then you have a baby that's overstuffed. Like, why? When this is probably mom's second or third child. And we know in the lactation world, the more you breastfeed, with each pregnancy, you have more milk, right? The body has memory. You're going to make milk. So those women, those bodies, they will have colostrum just flowing. I had a mom whose baby was in the NICU getting formula, and her breasts were engorged. I spent 45 minutes helping her hand express her breast. Why? Right? Why weren't you ever? No conversation whatsoever. So it makes me very angry as a medical professional that these things aren't happening. It's telling me you're lazy. It's telling me you don't care. Right? And so people who are lazy and don't care at their jobs, in any job, there's consequences. If you're lazy and you don't care in the medical field, people die. And there should be consequences, but there aren't any consequences. So that is the big problem, that why we're out here in the streets and we're protesting, and we have a Black president, and the Earth app is coming, is being birthed because there has to be consequences, because it makes no logical sense.
Absolutely.
Right? When you think about it that way.
No, absolutely. No logical. There's no logic to it.
Yeah.
And it continues to be perpetuated. So we're glad you're on the ground out, doing the work. And do you find, how do you educate people prenatally? What do you think families can do prenatally to get prepared for what they might need? Because I guess I feel like as an educator, a lot of what I'm doing is saying we have to be honest about what may happen in the hospital, and that it's not 100% geared and aligned toward helping people always, nurse.
Yeah. So if you are across the board, if you are a person who is planning to get pregnant, or if you are currently pregnant, you should be taking a class. Take a class. Get the narrative out of your head that it's natural, and baby's gonna do it, and baby should know what to do, and my body should know what to do. Yes, but instincts and knowledge is what we need, right? So the babies have the instincts, you have the instinct too, but get the practical knowledge and it's going to be a lot smoother. Not that it's gonna be easy, get that out of your head too. It's not going to be easy. Not that it's going to be hard, I don't like to use that word, but it's a challenge. And challenges we can prepare for and overcome, right? So definitely take a class, right? And then when I'm doing my classes, newborn care or the strictly prenatal, and it's majority women of color or people of color, I'm really talking to them about preparing for battle, basically. And it's sad because you just want to go in, you want to have your baby, you want to snuggle, but it's almost like you have to prepare for battle. You have to okay, somebody's going to talk about formula. No, it's like somebody's going to come in here and try to take my baby. No, so I go into and just break it down to, I don't say baby, I say little human. We all, come into this world the same way. As technology and all the apps that they're being made, and all the diapers and all these cool strollers and all that stuff, the basics is we all come into the world the same way, right? And when we come into the world, we work on our instincts, and nature knows what to do. So that's that instinctual stuff, right? So knowing how big baby's tummy is. Back to human development, why they're feeding this way, because the tummy's so small, they're eating a lot. They're eating a lot because their tummy's so small, but supply and demand, growth and milk supply. This is why everything's happening, right? So really breaking it down and connecting it for people and telling them straight out, in this 3-hour class that you have gotten more education than the nurses and the doctors that you will encounter sometimes. So feel empowered in that. Feel empowered that you can tell somebody, stop, no, I don't want to do this. Okay, if my baby needs to be supplemented, supplement does not mean formula. Supplement means extra food, right? Can we hand express first? Can we pump? And then, and I, not to just, it's like, yes, put breast milk on it. Like breast milk fixes everything, right? But we're not wackadoos out here that know, like, if your leg is broken, you're not going to put breast milk on it. You're going to get it fixed, right? So I always say, if it's not a medical emergency, and if somebody is telling you something, okay, well, how much time do I have? How much, can hand express? Can you give me time? 30 minutes, an hour. If that's not going to disrupt and really put baby in a medical emergency, then take that time. Let's hand express. Let's get some milk out. Your colostrum can bring that blood sugar up. These are studies that are out there. It's not just things that, lactation consultants and doulas pull out of their ass. These are studies that have been done by governments and people, right? And again, the governing bodies, there's AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics. So when you go to your pediatrician and they're telling you, oh, we should start giving the baby a little formula, put cereal in the baby's body in the bottle, and the baby's only 2 or 3 months. And this is still said to a lot of my clients. I had a client who baby was constipated and the doctor told her to give her 2 ounces of prune juice. The baby was about 12 days old.
Oh my goodness.
Mom had tons of milk and was also giving formula, which has iron on it. Mom was also on an iron pill, right? So it's just, these things are still being said, but telling people, educating them that the AAP is your pediatrician's governing body. And on their governing body says that babies should be exclusively breastfed for 6 months. So why are they telling you this? And present that to them. Well, it says this, so why are you telling me this, right? Make people do their job. It's lazy medical care. That's what it is. It's lazy medical care. The baby's stuffed with formula, I can check it off. They're moving on that chart. Let's keep it moving, right? So the way we naturally birth our babies and the way we naturally feed our humans, right, doesn't make money. And again, as much as, you can call me conspiracy theorist or whatever you want to call, follow the money. Right. We are in America. There's no secret. Follow the money, right? And in the Black community, things are heavily, heavily pushed. And we can, again, look at statistics or charts or whatever you call that, financials, right, of how much money is spent in certain communities on certain things, right? There are studies, there are ways to track these things. And it's because things are heavily promoted and heavily pushed to certain communities. So it's not like we're pulling this stuff out of our butt. It's not that I don't want to be sitting here talking about this and disparities. It's like,
right.
I do this because I have a little one who I don't want her to have to be talking about this years from now.
Right. Right. I hope that in 20 years from now, and I feel like 20 seems like a long time, that maybe I'm not hopeful that we'll be done in 10. So maybe in 20 years we're not talking about this anymore because we've talked about it. But we still got to talk a lot right now.
Yeah, we got to keep talking. You got to keep talking.
What do you think about, actually, it's interesting, Brelfies, right? The breastfeeding selfie or the nursing selfie, in a way, like that seems to be one way that a lot of parents are really empowering that message, right? Like, I'm doing this is normal. Like, I think 20 years from now, we may also not need to take pictures of our babies eating because we'll be like, oh, it's just, they're just eating.
Exactly, right? I don't even think you could probably, well, I guess there's pictures if you go way, way far back. There are some like vintage pictures, but when it, I guess in the 50s and stuff, when it was being pushed, formula was being pushed on everyone, you can't really find pictures. It's a rare picture of people like breastfeeding. Yeah.
But it does seem to really empower a lot of parents too, to see those images or put themselves out and being like, I'm breastfeeding, because you don't think I do this, right?
Yeah. So like so Chocolate Milk Cafe.
Tell me about Chocolate Milk Cafe. We really haven't talked about it.
So Chocolate Milk Cafe is a peer-to-peer breastfeeding group for Black families. It was started by Hakima Payne out in Kansas City, Missouri. She has a nonprofit called Uzazi Village. And I love the name. I met her. She's wonderful. She came to New York and we met. And then I was talking about it with a few colleagues. And then we had her come back for training. So we became a chapter of the Chocolate Milk Cafe. And then there's a few around the other states. And then it became, we started getting a lot more people wanting to, because Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri, I've never been, but it's different demographics. And, you know, like in Brooklyn alone, you can have like 10 groups because it's so big, you know? So we were looking to grow it. And so talking with her, she saw the vision that we had and what needed to happen basically for it to be birthed and grow. So this year we became a nonprofit. We officially became a nonprofit. So, and then when we brought it to New York, we opened it up not just to Black American families, but anyone who identifies along the African diaspora. So it's a safe, sacred space because, like I mentioned before, there's representation matters, and there are the disparities, and there are just, you don't want to have to explain yourself all the time, right? So it's similar to, I'm sure a lot of people out there have heard of La Latched League, where it's peer-to-peer, they have their leaders, but and the Latched League is international. They've been all over, but in those spaces, even Black and brown families, when they would go in, it would be predominantly white, and it would just sometimes not feel welcoming. So that's where Mama Hakima grew Chocolate Milk Cafe out of. And so we're here in New York. We have five locations in New York, and then we're also in Kansas City, Missouri, in Rhode Island, and Oklahoma. So yeah, so
are you doing virtual support groups right now?
Yes. So one,
how to find that, because I'll put it in.
chocolatemilkcafe.com, okay. And it has upcoming meetings tab. So yeah, once it was like, oh my gosh, so we shifted, and we're going to continue that for the rest of the year, no matter. I think we'll all be inside for the rest of the year, but even no matter, we're continuing it through the rest of the year. I forgot why I started talking about it, but
I don't know. Came out
yeah. But just that we're here, it's a support group for families of color. And
how many meetings are you running a week right now yourself?
So I do the Harlem, it's once a month. It's the last Monday of every month. So it'll be this Monday, the 31st, the last day of Black Breastfeeding Week. Like Newark is having one tonight. They're like the fourth Thursday of every month. So if you go on, there's a beautiful calendar that shows, and you just click on, and you can join anyone. You don't have to wait. The beauty about being virtual is that you can join anyone. We actually had someone from Maryland at my last meeting, and like I did for Black Breastfeeding Week, I did a prenatal class last night, and I had someone from Detroit. So yeah, it's kind of fun. I was so against this before COVID. I was so against Zooms. Like when we would have our like Chocolate Milk Cafe like kind of meetings to discuss and talk about administrative stuff, they'd be like, we can do a Zoom. I'd be like, no, I'm in like with it, because it is it's extending our reach. So that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I was definitely, we were all like, no, not virtually, but when you can't get the support elsewhere, it's certainly, I think it's really helping people, right, get the support that they need that they maybe couldn't be getting right now. So
yeah, and even just to check in and say hi and see other mothers, like it's just that connection. Like you don't. So the beauty of I mentioned that started out talking about there's like different, for lack of a better word, levels of lactation support, and they're all valid. And so, I was just talking to a mom today where she has an older baby and things are changing. And I was like, I think you just like need to check into a group and talk, like, and see that you're not alone. Cause again, they had to move out of the state. They're isolated, it's kind of isolating. So it's like, sometimes you just need to talk things through. And when you see that, oh, there are other people out there that are going through the same thing. Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit also about another disparity that seems really, clear is the lack of access to education for Black people who want to become lactation educators or midwives or doctors, but especially, and doulas even, right? Like the cost of kind of doing something that was a peer-to-peer kind of support. So can we talk a little bit about that, like in terms of lactation consultants and how easy it is to find a person of color to work with if you are a person of color?
Not easy. So I know, like, one of our Rhode Island peer counselor, our Rhode Island Chocolate Milk Cafe facilitator, I was talking with her and she's like, yeah, there are no Black IBCLCs in the state. And I was like, what? How can that be Black? The whole state, there's none, right? And then, like, in Oklahoma, she was telling me there's only like 3 or something. I was just like, this is ridiculous. So becoming an IBCLC, so I did a breastfeeding educator, which is like 20 hours. And then I did the CLC. And then again, just being in the medical field, I felt like I wanted to know more. I wanted to get, and so I went on to become IBCLC. And again, it's not easy in the sense that there isn't a, like, you don't go, oh, I want to go to this nursing program. I'm going to apply to this school and go through and get financial aid or take out a loan, right? So there is different pathways, like I mentioned before, I think. So there's pathway 1, which is if you're already a medical professional working with the mother-baby dyad, you can collect hours and sit the exam. There is a pathway 2 that is a college program where you can get your college credits and get the mentoring hours and then sit the exam. But when I was coming up, it was only in North Carolina. Right. So it's still in North Carolina. I think there's a few more. I don't remember where they are, but there wasn't one local to me. But because I was in the medical field, lucky enough, I had the college courses. And so I just had to get there's 500 mentoring hours. So I had to find a mentor. So that's the thing, finding a mentor. And it's usually IBCLC who's out there doing home visits, right? So, but for 500 hours, a home visit can last you 2 hours, 3 hours. So it's like, I gotta do the math on that. So it can take very long. And then the mentoring IBCLCs would charge by the hour. And I couldn't afford it. I was a new parent just getting back into work and, like, not having a true maternity leave, right? We can talk about that for America too, right? So living off savings and then building that back up, getting back into work. So that took me a long time. I was lucky enough to one of the hospitals that I worked at, Beth Israel at the time, which is now Mount Sinai, Beth Israel. They had a program where you can get your hours. And I worked at Beth Israel. So it was the way I came to this was really like divine intervention. So I was literally sitting in the building at my desk and I typed in how to get mentoring hours, and then I was like, oh, wait, where is this place? So I went like all throughout the hospital and ended up meeting, Allison. Yeah. Allison Walsh and Rachel Levine. And so they became my mentors and I was able to, so I would work Monday through Friday and then on Saturdays and Sundays I would come back and do. But even then it was like a 5-hour shift because of the way the hospital paid for, they would only have a certain amount of hours that the lactation consultants could be on the floor because they didn't want to, so it was only like 5 hours here and then having a little one and babysitting and, so it was a lot of juggling. So, but I did it. I pushed through. Their fee was way lower than what I was hearing from outside people. And then I was able to barter for hours, right? So coming up that way and then becoming an IBCLC, and then the exam is like 600, and when I took it, it was 600 and change. So when I came out, I was like, my other passion is I want to make more IBCLCs because I would go to meetings, I would go into spaces, and I would be the only person or one of the only people of color. So, and again, learning about the disparities, knowing how you just relate, you know, when you see somebody who's, you know, familiar and looks like you. So a big passion of mine is creating more IBCLCs while helping and guiding them. So I always say, if you see this space and you want to get on that path and you want to talk about boobs, come to me and I will help you figure it out. So, but yeah, it can get costly. So when I started out, I really didn't charge. Well, I didn't do a lot of home visits, so I didn't have a lot of people to follow me. But when I do my breastfeeding groups, people pop in, and I sometimes, depending on, you know, how they came to me and when we talk, I won't charge. I barter. You know, people do my social media for me, you know, so,
Yeah.
you know, so you can barter and, you know, exchange energies in other ways. And then Allison and Patricia McGuire, we created the Lactation Learning Collective. And that's a way for people to collect their hours, because finding a mentor is also pretty hard too. Because it's a lot for lactation consultants. It's like, okay, I have to go do my clients, and now I have to take on this person and, you know, kind of guide them along the path and teach them and stuff. And so, yeah, it's unfortunately, again, there's no like clear path for this, and it can get costly. But again, if you are listening and you want to know how to do it, I'm always willing to get on and talk. And when we were out in the world, I would meet for coffee. And
Right now we'll meet in squares and screens.
exactly.
No, I mean, so if you had one thing that you like had a magic bullet and tomorrow you were put in charge and you were like, I'm going to change the hospitals and, you know, reduce the disparities for Black families, and like, what would you do in the hospital? Like, I mean, is that too big of a question?
Oh man. Well, if I had a magic pill and I wanted to reduce disparities for Black bodies in general, I would not have them go to the hospital. Mm-hmm. We would have birthing centers pop up all over the place, and every birthing center have a space for chocolate milk cafe and, you know, and be teaching prenatal class. I was like, this is, if you're out there and you're doing it for passion, not money, but it's not going to make you like, but I always say I'm so okay with working myself out of a job if every person knew how and was back to, and we were back to that society and that village where everyone like breastfed, I would be fine. And I just, you know, keep doing postpartum doula stuff where you know, nourish the family, right, for the new little human. But yeah, I would do as much education as I can to have people not enter the current hospital system that they're in.
Said it right there. Thank you. I mean, I feel like I'm like, that's where you said it. Absolutely. So I want to answer one of our listeners' questions, which is, what are your thoughts on supplements that claim to increase supply?
So it depends on a few things. So if you are having the feeling that your supply is dipping, as your lactation consultant, we're going to talk about why that is. You have to look at what's going on around you. Is the baby not latched correctly? Because we need a good latch to have the baby efficiently drain the breast, because the drained breast is going to fill more. Are you back at work, or, you know, usually when there's a separation, the baby gets a little bit older and they start feeding less because they are more efficient, then sometimes we get the message that I don't have the supply, right? So it's not really a dip, that your baby's more efficient, your body's doing it. Or sometimes when we go back to work or things are shifting, you can be stressed a little bit about it, and you're pumping. The pump, is it fitting right? Is it, you know, so there are a lot of things that I want to explore on why do you think there's a dip first. And if it's a true dip, then maybe we can add in one of what we call them galactagogues, and those are the herbs that are meant to boost these supplements. So just like anything, any herb, any medication out there, it interacts in your body differently. If you are taking medication, if you're currently on medication, you don't want to just go and take something over the counter because you don't know how it'll interact. The teas and stuff they sell out there, you can take it, but again, it's going to some bodies it works on, some bodies it doesn't. There are other things out there. So in America, it's fenugreek, right? Everyone kind of goes to fenugreek, but in other countries, it's different things. There are different companies out there that sell moringa or shatavari. There are these other herbs that can, and they may interact with your body a little bit better. So so entering one of the herbs into your body is not always the first go-to. I would say talk it through, pop into a breastfeeding group if you can virtually and talk it through so we can see what's going on, or start pumping a little bit more. So if your baby is feeding less and you're just not sure, add in a pump somewhere. More stimulation, more milk removed is going to tell the body to make and boost a little bit more. So sometimes you don't have to go straight to a supplement. Right.
Thank you. And we have another question from the audience. How often do you see dun 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 tongue tie? So much on tongue tie these days, right? How often do you see tongue tie? What are your thoughts on should it be corrected? Should somebody get a revision? I know this is a complex question, but it really is out, right? Thank you.
Yeah. So the tongue tie, or where it's called now, is tethered oral tissues. So meaning the frenulum that's under the tongue. So again, I say that me getting into this business is divine intervention because I am tongue-tied. And my daughter is tongue-tied, and we've never gotten ours clipped. I was breastfed from my mother, my daughter breastfed from me. I had the initial like, oh, the first 2 weeks it pinches and it hurts a little bit, and then we got better, right? So she didn't have any speech issues, so I just never got it clipped. I did get braces at 33, so the tongue restriction can affect in different ways. So if I walk into a consult and there's a possibility that there may be a tie, we're going to do a few things. I'm going to adjust that latch and see if that individual can work with the tongue that they have. Can they get deeper onto the breast? Can they pull the nipple all the way back? Can they move the tongue to efficiently remove milk from the breast and not damage the nipple? If that's happening and baby's feeding, the milk supply is increasing, they're having their diapers, baby's gaining weight, then there's no need, in my opinion, to get the clip if you don't want to, right? If there is damage to the nipples, no matter what you do, that the baby is not staying on, the nipple's always coming out flat and it's cracking and bleeding, then I would encourage you might want to go ahead and get an evaluation. Lactation consultants, your doulas, no one should be telling you that your baby is tongue-tied. I don't say your baby is tongue-tied. I say, this is what I see, and this is what we're going to work with, and this is what may be happening. But you're going to go to an ENT or pediatric dentist to get the diagnosis. And they are more versed in how the tongue works, right? And they can tell you and recommend. There are ENTs and pediatric dentists that we refer to that'll say, no, go back and work with the lactation consultant and see. So if you go to an ENT or pediatric dentist and they're just like, oh yeah, we're going to clip, that's not great either. Right? So you really want to see, for me, it's what that individual can do with their tongue. Again, I don't want mom's nipples in pain, right? So if you are in pain, then you can't adjust it, it's not adjusting, then you may want to look into getting it revised. If you're not in pain, but the baby is constantly snacking all day, because the tongue is a muscle and it gets tired. If your baby's on and you see them do this like little quiver and they're like not able to do a full feed, or they've been snacking all day, then that's a baby that can't efficiently drain the breast. And so that's another reason. So there's no pain at the nipple, but they're not transferring milk well. If they're not gaining weight, if they're not having the diapers, that's another reason to further get a consultation. So for me, It's not like, oh yeah, your baby has one, you should just go. Again, we're going to talk about it. We're going to work on a plan. We're going to figure out, can this human work with the tongue that they have? And again, I come with that because I have one, and so I have a different perspective on it.
Thank
It's
you.
funny because even in the lactation world, now, as lactation consultants, when we're talking to people, we can go, oh yeah, you have a tongue tie, right? We can see it, right?
Right.
And so people are like, oh, you don't want to get yours clipped? And I'm like, no, I'm kind of like, it's like my thing.
You're like,
I'm kind of like, I'm like attached to it, literally. I don't want to. But the reason that I mentioned ENTs and speech therapists and stuff, no, is because usually people that have a tight frenulum like mine, they usually have a speech issue. So that's why I was saying, when my daughter was, started talking, I was listening to see if she was having a speech issue, like lisp and stuff. So in that case, they may talk to you about. So if you are out there and you decided to bottle feed and not get the clip, if your baby's dribbling on the bottle, they can't even hold the bottle, or a pacifier, that's a baby, that's a human that can't control their tongue. So there's a lot of digestive issues that come with that, because they'll just be guzzling at a bottle. So it's not they have it, I don't want to get the clip, so I'm just going to do the bottle. It's still the tongue that'll show up in different ways.
Yeah. Thank you. And then we had another question somebody submitted earlier, which was, why do babies pull away while on the nipple? My baby sometimes turns his head and fusses while nursing, and I don't know how old this baby is. The person didn't mention. So the general question.
Yeah. So I would say, at what point in the feed is that, right? Look for those swallows. The baby's gulping and gulping and gulping, and then it slows down, and then they're doing that. They're probably telling the body to send more milk. So I always say, as much as, again, breastfeeding is beautiful and it's all this stuff, we're mammals. Yeah. Go look at the way other mammals eat, like cats and dogs, like when they do those things, or they do that. Have you seen that one going around on Facebook with the dog that's like, there's a little puppy and it's on the mom's nipple like this? That's the way it feeds. It's like, oh, right. but yeah, so sometimes it's send another letdown. They pull away, or they'll kind of shake at the breast. Or if you are somebody that has a lot of milk production and the milk is just flowing at the baby, they may be trying to stop that fire hose coming from them and kind of pull back. So either way, I would unlatch them, take them off, give them a minute, maybe offer them a burp, just give them a second, and then reintroduce.
Awesome. Thank you. And the other person here, I don't know if you saw the chat, said thank you when you talked about supply. So helpful, because her baby's in 11 months and is probably just more efficient and is happy after nursing. A lot more. Yeah. So anyway, thank you. You can do that. So, I want to go back to the theme of celebration this week of Black parents breastfeeding and nursing or body feeding. Do you want to tell us if there's any stories or a success story you had recently with a family, or anything that you want to share just in celebration of the Black families that you've been working with?
Oh, that's what now I remember why I brought up Chocolate Cafe. So this will tie into it. So in February, for Black History Month, we did a campaign where it is, the hashtag was I am Black History, because when we had people send in pictures, so we were talking about the birth phase. Yeah, so we had people send in pictures because we wanted to flood our timeline and people's timelines with seeing Black women breastfeeding, like, chest feeding, because again, we're here and this is what we do, right? So, and then the reason that it connected with Black history is because I think when you think of Black history, you think of like, Martin Luther King and people like history. But for a lot of people, Black people in their families, they are changing the trajectory of their history, right? They're making history by making that choice to breastfeed, to bring it back, to revive it. So it's been, it was just beautiful, all the pictures that we got. And so now we're asking people to send, for this Black Breastfeeding Week, we're asking people to send in pictures of toddlers feeding. Because again, you get, not the number one, but one of the big things in, Black families sometimes is that baby is still on the breast. You still breastfeeding that baby, you know? So it's like, yeah, because, you know, and I hate to call it extended feeding. It's not extended. Somebody mentioned that extension means like something was supposed to stop at a certain point and you've extended it. It is full-term breastfeeding. Breastfeeding, it goes on until mutually the parent and the child decides to stop, right? The child decides to wean. And that worldwide is anywhere between 2 and 7 for humans, right? So, but yeah, so we're asking people to send in those pictures. So I think, again, that's, you know, a celebration, just changing the narrative, changing the pictures that people see.
And where should we ask them to send in right now? Where are you calling for that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you want.
at Chocolate Milk Cafe? Or what?
Social at chocolatemilkcafe.com.
Okay.
So yeah, they can send their pictures in of them breastfeeding their toddlers, because we all know that toddlers like to breastfeed any which way.
You get some really amazing ones, right?
Exactly. But yeah, I think it's just been a celebration all around. And I'm just really excited about Chocolate Milk Cafe and having the space, and it's being so well received. Like it's all, you can feel like the collective, like, we've been waiting for this. I mean, there have been pockets of other breastfeeding groups for Black women out there as well, but yeah, we're just really excited that it's happening.
Okay. So we have somebody asking, and we'll just kind of round out the last few minutes. I have one more question for you, but I want to get to Christina's question. And somebody else had asked a question about tongue tie, but I think that you addressed it pretty sufficiently, because they were saying, can you breastfeed with one or not? And it sounds like your daughter did and you did. So we do know that both it can.
Yeah. So no pain, babies transferring milk well, and gaining weight. Those are the check.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. And then somebody wrote, as entering the birth world, wanting to work with all marginalized communities, including people of color, are there any resources or places to find information to give education in a way that's helpful and understanding that I will never understand, but want to provide the space as an ally, which is kind of the shift I was going to move into at the end. Like, how can we collectively, how can we best help change the tide? Like, what would you like to see from white birth workers?
Educating yourselves in the sense of, especially take this week, right, that there are so many things being shared via social media. So finding a group to breastfeed, doula group or agency to, this Ancient Song in Brooklyn, I'm sure you've heard of, right? And checking out their websites, or even taking their course. Like, just because you've done a doula training doesn't mean you can't do another one. And, it's like advanced, right? So taking courses, see what courses they're having out there. There are Ame Brill. She did Our White Work. She is a white woman who works and does workshops and hosts groups for white women and white people that talk about, these situations and such. So there are many things out there that you can check into to educate yourself more. And then, of course, they would have resources. There are the resources out there. So, of course, if you come across a client who, seeks you out and just happens to be a person of color, you can say, you, of course, do their visit. We're not saying not do the consultation with them. You can definitely do the consultation with them, but knowing, especially if you're teaching prenatally, you may want to check in with them and make sure you're educating them, know which hospitals, know where they're going to have more issues, know which providers, and make them aware and educate them so they can be empowered and go into that situation knowing, right, that this is somebody who, or of course, hopefully they would change from that provider or that hospital. I think a big one for me in all of the racial justice issues going on is, and I tell my friends, my Caucasian, my white friends are not of color quite frequently, is that it's not so much I need you to come into the community and do something, but I need you to go into your community and educate your community. Because if you are still tolerating your friend, or your father, or your sister, or your cousin saying things or not believing or thinking that, you know, again, that we're making up these stories, if you're tolerating and not educating them, then we're going to be stuck in this loop forever. So when you, just like with breastfeeding, you know, I know better. So I wanted to teach my community. When you know better, you do better. Same for you. When you know better and you know, and now that you have this education, you have this awareness, spread it. Don't spread it amongst the people who are already out here doing the stuff. We know this. You need to go back in and tell your community and change the narrative in your community, because they're not going to receive the information from me the same way they're going to receive it from you. Same way, you know, it works on both ends, right? So, but yeah, I think there are many organizations out there where you can get that information. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to putting your name, make sure I did that right. LaShanda Dandrich, IBCLC, also Uptown Village Cooperative, Chocolate Milk Cafe. LaShanda is also on the Boober platform as well, and is on so many amazing platforms and does so many wonderful things. So, and runs all of her own support as well, and is just an incredible resource. Thank you so much, LaShanda, for
thank you for having me.
Yeah, so good to see you, and we will bid adieu to everybody and see you soon. Thank you again. Have a great rest of the week. The rest of this week, it continues on until August 31st, but we should say let's just continue on.
Exactly. 365 for us, but it'll be over on Monday for everyone.
All the time. And here we are. Yeah. So thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
Take care.